One of my favorite segments in Bill Maher's Real Time is when he does his I don't know it for a fact, I just know it's true routine. Maher will say something like, I don't know for a fact that Elon Musk is growing a mustache just to own the libs, but I know it's true. Or, I don't know for a fact that RFK Jr. did something weird with the body of the dog that Kristi Noem shot. I just know that it's true. Sadly, Bill Maher's shtick is making fun of a real phenomenon, which is just too common in our public discourse. People find it exciting in some way to speculate aloud that those vapor trails we see behind high-flying jets are really mind control drugs that the government is spreading over the whole population, or that the COVID vaccine contains tiny GPS trackers that will let Bill Gates know when you go to some drug den or strip club. People will say it, then others will repeat it with conviction. It gets picked up by radio talk show hosts. Then Donald Trump will post it on Truth Social, and the next thing you know, our president is telling us that a lot of people are saying it, which is his way of saying, I don't know it for a fact, I just know that it's true. It's embarrassing that so many adults are willing to believe the most preposterous things, so much so that a lot of us have become so cynical that we tend not to believe anything at all. We can reasonably assume that politicians, political parties, the news media, university professors, and certainly the people that you meet on dating sites are all liars with some barely concealed ulterior motive to trick you or to manipulate you. I know that I'm personally much more cynical than I once was. I'm less trusting, I'm more suspicious. I know 20 years ago when I went into a voting booth, if the ballot had some state constitution amendments on it, I always just voted yes. I assumed that the state legislature is full of people that know what they're doing, and if they thought we needed this particular amendment, they know better than I do, so I voted for it. Experience has taught me now to go to the other extreme. I almost always vote no, unless I've had the time to research it properly and find out if I think it's really a good amendment. So I suspect in these last few elections, I've probably voted against bridges and paved roads just out of a reflexive mistrust for state government. But here's the good news. Fairly reliable knowledge is not impossible. We can never be absolutely certain of much, but we can reasonably attain reliable knowledge about most of the things that affect us the most. Though we'll probably always have some things that we just personally believe that we can't prove, but we just somehow feel like they must be true. For example, I have no idea whether Jeffrey Epstein actually committed suicide in prison. I just know that the obvious cover-up and official attempts at distraction make me think that he really did have a lot of incriminating evidence on a lot of powerful people, especially Donald Trump, such that I find it more plausible to believe that he was murdered rather than to believe that he committed suicide. Suicide during a brief and unexplained interruption in the recording of security cameras in his prison. I don't know for a fact that he was murdered. I just know that it's true. A man with a long history of pedophilia and con jobs is certainly a malignant narcissist, and they are unlikely to ever commit suicide, especially when they've got the goods on presidents, members of the royal family, and billionaires. Still, even though a malignant narcissist is very unlikely to take their own life, it isn't hard to imagine that a malignant narcissist might kill someone in order to hide a dirty secret. So you do the math. Oh, and by malignant narcissist, I mean Donald Trump. But let's move on. There's actually a part of philosophy born in the writings of Aristotle that is devoted to how we know what we know. And that's called epistemology, which may sound a bit daunting if you've not had an introduction to philosophy class, but honestly, at least on the surface, it's not that tough. You may think you don't know what epistemology means, but even the uninitiated are generally familiar with René Descartes' most famous maxim, I think, therefore I am, the famous cogito ergo sum. In Descartes' meditations, he set out to doubt everything as a thought exercise, to force himself to doubt everything, all of the way down to doubting his own existence. How, after all, do any of us know that we actually exist? Many people seem to think that when they watch The Matrix, that it was more of a documentary than it was a science fiction movie. But even if we are all captured in the Matrix with a fake world being projected into our minds, still the fact that we are aware of our own thinking is singular proof that, at least in some form, we must exist. In epistemology, there are two kinds of knowing. Knowing, like Descartes' cogito, is called a posteriori, knowledge that comes after the fact or after we have experienced it. All of science is predicated on this kind of knowing. The scientific method seeks to articulate facts based on observation, repetition, and analysis. The other kind of knowing, in Latin is called a priori, knowledge before the fact or before we've had an experience of it. A newborn baby, for example, knows to root for a nipple without ever having taken a class in breastfeeding, which is rather less impressive when you consider the construction and engineering skill of the southern masked weaver of Africa, which constructs its intricate nests out of wide strips of grass, reeds, or palm blades. Birds just know how to make the nest that is unique to its species, except for a few of the kind of dull thug birds who will either steal another bird's nest or, even worse, just drop in when the mom's away and lay their eggs in with her eggs. But still, they are born with a survival instinct, which is noteworthy, even if it's not laudable. There are things that we think we know without experience. Things that are either somehow revealed to us or revealed to someone else whom we are inclined to believe. All religions tend to fit under that category of I don't know it for a fact, but everyone expects me to believe that it's true. Religions have traditionally valued belief without evidence, while science places little or no value on any belief that you have for which you cannot offer reasonable and testable proof. Now, personally, I favor what's called evidence-based faith, something I've written about in longer form in my 2014 book, Progressive Faith and Practice, which I will shamelessly tell you is still available on Amazon. People often assure themselves and others that God has spoken to them, or the Holy Spirit has revealed something to them, as if by miracle, just in their heads. Science dismisses such a priori evidence because it cannot be repeated, it cannot be observed, and it cannot be analyzed. So it's just a truth claim. It doesn't mean that it isn't true. It just means that you cannot know if it is true or not. Many people believe in ghosts. They will even tell you that they have seen a ghost. But their personal experience doesn't pass the test of critical thinking because the experience cannot be repeated. If someone tells me they've seen a ghost, I say, "Oh, show me the ghost." Well, you can't really do that. So then it can't be observed by me, it can't be tested by others. If your experience cannot be repeated, if it cannot be observed, if it cannot be tested, then it's your belief, and you can keep it if you want to, but you really shouldn't expect anyone else to believe you. All of the Quran are sayings that Muhammad claimed were revealed to him by the angel Gabriel. But no one else saw Gabriel. No one else heard Gabriel's voice. Hence, all of Islam is based on the a priori conviction of Muhammad. And if you are not disposed towards giving Muhammad that level of credibility, then the whole thing falls apart. This can certainly be said of other world religions as well. I've been so many times, I've had someone give me a blank stare when they say, "Well, the Buddha taught." And I tell them, nothing of Buddha's teachings were written down for the first 400 years after Buddha died. That stretches credibility a good deal farther than I'm willing to go. There is no historical evidence for what we call the teachings of Buddha. They are just Buddhist traditions. It may be very helpful, very insightful, very valuable to a lot of people, but it's highly unlikely that any of it came from Buddha. That's not to say that there's not a lot of wonderful things in Buddhist Dharma or in the Muslim Quran or the Christian Bible. It's just that none of it is supported by anything that can rationally be called evidence. As existentialists often do, we just sometimes say, "It pleases me to think so." And all we can do is leave it at that. If you're a Muslim and you think the Quran is the Word of God, if it pleases you to think so, you're free to do so. I can't imagine why any of the rest of us would. A priori knowledge isn't bad. Just look at the nest of the southern masked weaver. It can be amazing. I don't know how the knowledge of how to build that nest is passed along, but generally you can say that clearly birds are born with the ability to know how to engineer a fairly complicated nest in many cases. We know from physics that everything in the world, all matter of all sorts, was created by the energy of exploding stars. Everything from earthworms to airplanes is made up of the same 12 particles of matter, which are held together by the same 4 forces of nature. For many years now, I've frequently pointed out that the 100-pound ficus tree that used to stand in my living room was made of exactly the same stuff as my 100-pound daughter. And yet, existentially, I knew that the two were not the same. Certainly not the same value to me. I liked my ficus tree. I kept it for nearly 40 years. But I love my daughter more than I love anything, to include my own life. I don't know that I love my daughter based on a medical test or something I can see in a microscope. I know it because I feel it. It's an a priori knowledge. But it is a priori knowledge that is as real to me as the light and heat from the sun. But I still can't prove that love in any scientific way. Both kinds of knowledge have value, and they have a place in our thoughts. But critical thinking demands evidence about most of the things that we believe in life. What has become dangerous in our time is how "it pleases me to think so" has come to take the place of any real evidence, of any analysis. For example, Donald Trump claims to have stopped 10 wars in the first 6 months of 2025. Could he find those countries on a map? Could he even name them? Does he think that He has stopped wars in Ukraine and Gaza because he has told the parties to stop fighting? Isn't this just delusional bragging because he wants to get the Nobel Peace Prize, probably because Obama got one? Are cities with black Democratic mayors really more dangerous than cities with Republican mayors, even if those Republican cities in question have murder rates and crime rates that are 4 times as high as the Democrat-managed cities where Trump wants to send in armed forces? It pleases Trump to think so, but it isn't so. There's no evidence. It simply pleases his racist bias. But that doesn't make it a fact. Facts are stubborn things. Now, most politicians lie at least some of the time, but what is dangerous in our present moment is the unprecedented way in which Trump tries to bend reality to his whims. He literally tried to convince people that they were in danger from a hurricane because he had drawn with a Sharpie on a weather map to extend the threat posed by that hurricane 400 miles west. In his second administration, he has just cut funding to the actual weather scientists, the meteorologists, who help to forecast dangerous weather, particularly important to those of us who live on the coast in Florida, to know when a hurricane represents a real threat, whether it's a Category 2 or a Category 4. He's fired the people that would have told us that. Trump fired Erica McIntarfer, the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He claimed that the country's job reports were being produced by a Biden appointee and were therefore suspect. She gave him a factual report with numbers that made Trump look bad, so he fired the researcher who brought him the bad news, as if that somehow changed the numbers. Good government depends on good factual information, but everything Trump says is on par with your delusional aunt who talks to ghosts. The Trump administration's plan for implementing his fascist takedown of American democracy has been to flood the field. This is something that his advisors cooked up, and it is a program to just throw out so many conspiracy theories, so many lies, so much propaganda, and to back it up with so many crazy executive orders that the media can't keep up, they can't investigate, they can't report on it all, so the voting public just gets so disgusted that they stop paying attention. This flood the field technique is working for them. Those of us who try to respond to the constant drumbeat of idiotic claims, misinformation, and crimes, we're being labeled as having Trump derangement syndrome, suggesting that the real problem is that we hate Trump so much that we're against everything he says and does. This is just another way of evading the central fact that our president is an uneducated, low IQ fascist who is the greatest threat to democracy since Hitler. We're not deranged. We're devoted to reality, even though this reality is increasingly nightmarish. Folks, the moon landing was real. The Earth is not flat. There are no mind-controlled drugs in the vapor trails left by jets. Tariffs cause inflation and can cause a major economic meltdown, a literal economic depression. The Trump Big Beautiful Bill did cut millions of people off of access to health care simply in order to give huge tax breaks to the richest 1% who absolutely do not need a tax break. Also, Russia started the war with Ukraine, and giving Russia Ukrainian land for peace will only guarantee that Russia will invade Ukraine again, as well as other neighbors, to take more territory to rebuild what was once the Soviet Union. One need only watch the sycophantic exercise of every cabinet meeting to realize that Trump wants to be a dictator, and he is appointing people to posts on the cabinet who are so stupid and so blindly loyal to him that he has no one to stop him from destroying our country. And these things, my friends, I will tell you that I do know for a fact, and I hope that you also realize that they are true so that we can all act on them.
Thank you for watching our videos. We are entirely dependent on the donations of our listeners and members. We hope that you find this content to be important enough to help us to keep offering these videos to the public at no charge by becoming a regular contributor. Please click on the donate button on our website at www.spfccc.org. Thank you for your support of progressive religious programming.